So let's get into creating a VM. Okay, so back to the step. Let's start over here. Okay, close everything down. And I'm on the Azure portal dashboard. I can either go into the new, which will bring up the entire marketplace, or I can go down to virtual machines. I'll say add. I get a choice of virtual machines. I'm going to pick a Windows server. I will pick Windows Server 2008 because that's really what's my choice here. Now you only get one choice at this stage, and that is the choice between the classic deployment model and the resource manager deployment model. As I said before, the focus of this exam is the resource manager model. The future is the resource manager model as Microsoft starts to wind down the classic portal. And migrating from classic to resource manager is a pain. And so my recommendation is to always pick the resource manager model unless you have a very, very specific reason and need to run in the classic model. But the resource manager is the default, and you should generally pick that if you can. Now it's going to be a few sort of setups here. Well, we have to give this a name. Okay, so I'm going to say Azure 532 exam test 1. It just has to be a unique name for you. You know, other people from within Azure, other customers can pick the same name. There's other places when you're talking about app services where the name has to be unique, but this one doesn't. I can pick whether I want to run high performance, which is SSD, or regular HD. So the solid state drives are standard for a lot of the workloads, but you know, hard disk is a bit cheaper usually. Now I need to create user ID and password, and this is what I'm going to use to remote in and log in and do my sort of work. So I'm going to type something here. Great. I have a subscription which pay as you go. You may have a free plan at your disposal. You may have another subscription model. Now this is the resource group. Like we said, this is the resource manager model. You can either create a new group, and I'll do that. AZ532 exam. Or I could have chosen one of my 6 existing groups. And this is where I get to pick the region. Now, it's important to know that Microsoft has currently 28 or so regions around the world. And so many of them in the United States, but many of them are in places Japan and Europe, Asia, Australia, Canada. So you're going to want to pick the region intelligently. Obviously, if performance and the lag time between yourself and the VM is an important consideration, pick one close to you. Pricing is a factor, as sometimes on occasion the pricing is different depending on the region. Now Microsoft does have a China facility, but that's a different company, and you have to need a different subscription for that. So I just pick one region and we'll stick with it. So let's go East US. Now here's the sizing. Okay, so I said we've got the A sizes and the D sizes. This is a very good way of comparing the two. You know, we want to see what the difference between the standard A1 is and the D, which has a bit more memory and local SSD. Let's go view all. I don't know why the pricing's not coming up, but that's Microsoft's problem. All right, here we go. This is in Canadian dollars, first of all. Yours might be different. But you can see here that depending on your need, you're going to pay, you know, $100 a month or $500 a month or $1,000 a month. If we go down to the A sizes as the standard generic, you know, this is a VM that's for most uses that doesn't have any particular performance needs. The lowest one is only $18 a month, so it's a very affordable computer if you ever need to spin up. A1 goes up from there, but we can sort of see here what services are offered. I'm going to pick the A1 standard. Actually, I'll pick A0. There's no particular reason. We're just doing a test here. But you'll see here, this is 0.25, which means it's a shared environment. So there's going to be a 1-core, well, it's always a shared environment, but a 1-core VM that's going to be, I'm only going to get 1/4 of that. Very little in the way of RAM memory. There's only one data disk. There's limitations on operations per second. Again, with the way that I'm going to be able to read and write to disk, and we'll have to look up, there's a documentation that talks about what counts as a operations per second. But this is IOPS, which is input output, which is the disk write operations. So if you've got very specific needs to write stuff, you're going to need to get a bigger, maybe get out of the A series. So let's pick that. It's going to create a brand new storage account for me to contain the disk for this. So when you're creating a virtual machine uses what's called a VHD, which is a virtual hard drive, which is a file. So even if you were creating a virtual machine on your local computer, a VHD would contain the operating system and basically simulate the hard disk for that virtual machine. Well, within Azure, that VHD is stored within a storage account. Okay, so you're not only going to pay for the virtual machine cost, but now there's going to be costs around having a storage account. Okay, so you should understand that. Well, we haven't got into networking yet. I'm just going to accept the defaults here, but it's going to create a brand new network for me and a subnet, assign IP address, and network security group, all by default. Once we get going into networking, we can have virtual networks that we create intentionally, and we can then add our virtual machine to the existing network. Once this is set, you can't move your virtual machine easily from one network to another. You have to then spin it down, spin it back up, replicate, do a backup and restore type of operation. So this decision is difficult to change. And we're not in a high availability. Now, availability set, we're going to talk about scaling, which is in a couple of sections from now. But when we're talking about scaling, we'll talk about Microsoft's SLA, the service level agreement, and how you can guarantee 99.95% uptime by running an availability set. You've got some sort of monitoring enabled or disabled, and diagnostics has its own storage account. So let's click OK. This is the summary of what they're going to create for me. Now, another thing that we should probably talk about is there's a thing called a template. And so now that I've set up this virtual machine, and I haven't yet created it yet, I could download the template as a file. And now that template becomes what I can create future virtual machines from. So if I like this and I go, you know what? I'm going to create 5, 10, 15, 20 virtual machines, but I want it to be the same operating system, same size, same settings, same everything. I can download this template. And then you can then use that to create virtual machines. So once you've done it once, it's almost like, it's a template. So I'm going to say OK. Now this takes a few minutes. I'm going to pause the video, but basically this is going to take a few minutes for Azure to spin up a virtual machine. But so it's 12:30 right now. We'll see what time it takes. But let's say less than 10 minutes, I'm going to have a Windows box that I can remote into and use as a Windows box. That's pretty remarkable.